This week on Africa Weekly, we go to Zamfara in northwestern Nigeria, where local citizens and defence militias have reached a peace deal to end decades of conflict. Then, we head to Ethiopia, where the government's efforts to prop up the manufacturing sector through cheap labour are failing, as the nation's youth are choosing not to work under the tough conditions. But first, let's take a look at the headlines from around the continent this week. Sudan this week agreed to hand over ex-President Omar al-Bashir to the International Criminal Court for his role in alleged war crimes in the Darfur region. Bashir is detained in his country after being convicted of corruption, an allegation that he denies. Wanted by the ICC, he evaded arrest for more than 10 years. Meanwhile, 10 months after his ousting, acute shortages of bread, fuel and foreign currency continue.
There is no accountability. We hear about the smuggling of bread, gasoline and everything else. However, we never hear that any of those smugglers were hanged or tried.
What our country has witnessed, from shortages in supplies and high prices, it's just a scene that reflects the miserable economic situation that has been inherited from the era of destruction.
The East African nation's economy remains in shambles after years of unrest and the secession of South Sudan in 2011. During a trip to Senegal, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau visited Gorée Island, a notorious slave trading post that sent countless Africans overseas during the transatlantic slave trade.
Humanity has not yet learned all the lessons of the past. We must continue to reflect on these in order to build a more just future.
During Trudeau's visit, Senegalese President Macky Sall defended his country's ban on same-sex activity. Sall said the West African state's laws reflected its cultural norms and that Senegalese citizens would reject legalizing homosexuality. Trudeau praised Senegal's reputation as a beacon of stability in an often turbulent region, saying that there's always more work to be done. Kenyans gathered to mourn the country's longest-serving leader, the uncompromising Daniel Arap Moi, at a state funeral after a week of mourning. Leaders had praise and criticism for the man who towered over national politics for over 2 decades.
In this solemn moment, let us all take comfort in the fact that President Daniel Arap Moi leaves behind a towering legacy of good that will transcend the generations.
I was, for example, one of the victims. But he was also forgiving, like I'm also forgiving.
Moi's body lay in state for 3 days before the funeral, where many queued to pay their last respects. Moi, who ruled the country for 24 years, died on the 4th of February, aged 95. At least 30 people were killed and dozens of women and children abducted in a jihadist raid in northern Nigeria's Borno state. The attack took place in the village of Orno along a main highway toward the region's capital, Maiduguri.
We were just sitting in the front seat of the car, and unexpectedly we heard them shout Allahu Akbar, which means God is great, and the shootings carried on. They first killed a lady in the front seat of the car, then we started running away.
More than a decade of Islamist insurgency in northern Nigeria has killed 36,000 people and displaced 2 million. The jihadists have now splintered into rival factions, with one group remaining faithful to Boko Haram. The other has pledged allegiance to the Islamic State. The Malian army has returned to the northern town of Kidal, where it was driven out by Tuareg separatists 6 years ago. Around 300 troops rolled into the former rebel bastion under UN escort and occupied the military base. The town became a symbol of the government's failure to control parts of the country as it battles the jihadist uprising.
We are grateful for all the efforts that the Malian government has made in order for the armed forces to return to Kidal in peace, in tranquility and with consent, so as not to provoke any incident.
A 2015 peace deal allowed the Malian government's return to Kidal, but the strategy to implement it was only agreed on a few weeks ago. South Africans lined the streets of Johannesburg to celebrate Zazibini Tunzi, the current Miss Universe who was crowned in December. Tunzi toured the streets in an open-top bus, sporting her Miss Universe sash and the short natural afro hairstyle, which has inspired many young black women across the world.
It's important for us black girls to have representation of, our identity. And especially for me, I'm natural, I'm a black girl, so I'm proud to see someone who is Miss Universe, who is in her natural state and presents herself as a natural self.
Tunzi was the first Miss Universe in history to win wearing a short afro and beat 90 other contestants from around the world for the title.
In this local government office in northwest Nigeria, local farmers organised into citizens' militias are cautiously laying down their arms. After years of spiralling conflict over land and resources between native farmers and Fulani ethnicity herders, a fragile peace deal appears to have been reached. In exchange for ending hostilities, local authorities in the Zamfara region have promised new employment opportunities for the militia members and the so-called Fulani bandits.
We should keep our weapons, we do not kill any Fulani or any other person, we should stop what we are doing. Based on his advice, we accept, that's why now we be a normal people.
Mere months ago, Hassan was a wanted man. For 8 years, he led a force of over 1,000 so-called bandits, camping out and planning raids from the region's dense forests. He insists that he only got involved as a matter of self-defense.
They set fire to my village and killed my parents. What were we supposed to do? Just wait and let them carry on attacking us?
But he and many of his fighters have now handed in their weapons under the government's amnesty programme. Hassan has already seen improvements to his daily existence.
Before, you never would have seen me here. I was living in the bush with my men. Today, the different communities coexist, and I can move around freely.
The conflict has caused an internal displacement crisis, with many thousands of people fleeing their homes to escape the raids and kidnappings. With the violence previously showing no signs of abating, the camps set up for the internally displaced have swollen. Last year alone, as many as 40,000 people also sought refuge in neighbouring Niger. In light of the New Deal, authorities are now encouraging people to leave the camps and return home, but not everyone is convinced.
I love my village, but because of these bandits, I will never be able to return home. Even if they have left the big cities, they are still in the bush. They terrorize us.
Despite the peace deal, some local farmers in the citizens' militias admit to keeping hold of some of their old weapons. They still fear that hostilities may one day return. When Zeman Zarihun landed a job at a textiles factory in southern Ethiopia, he thought he had won a ticket to a better life. But just months later, he resigned.
It was very difficult. I suffered a lot at this company. We were made to work long hours for a laughable salary. It was exhausting.
These conditions have put off many more workers, feeding a growing disenchantment with the country's drive towards industrialization. Earning an average of just €23 per month, textiles workers in Ethiopia are among the worst paid in the world. At the Hawassa Industrial Park, where Zeman's factory was based, the staff turnover rate in 2017 to 2018 rarely strayed far from 100%. But the rock-bottom wages have led to Ethiopia becoming a prime destination for international clothing brands looking for cheaper labour. Foreign investment levels are now 4 times higher than they were 5 years ago. The government considers the development of these industries to be a vital source of new jobs.
If wage is high and investment doesn't come, not new employment is going to be created.
And many manufacturing bosses are happy with the government's approach.
I never seen what we are getting the support from government of Ethiopia. I never get anywhere else.
Many of the workers being swept up in Ethiopia's drive towards industrialization come from rural and farming backgrounds. And so the concept of organizing into formal trade unions is taking a while to get off the ground. But things are gradually changing.
In the near future, we establish, I'm sure that no more than 2 months or 3 months, we establish a labor union in this industry park.
But it will take time for these unions to fully form and start exerting serious influence. And with youth unemployment still high in Ethiopia, factories have no problem replacing the disgruntled workers who decide to leave manufacturing behind.
That's all from Africa Weekly this time.